So, with that wrapping up the series, I think it's important to try to look at why this show was such a hit. Because it was huge. Like,
yes.
Ridiculous.
Haruhi-ism was it. It was the thing. I believe even you, Mr. Izumi, would often close your show out with Haruhi Bless.
I didn't do that, but I have had Sweet Haruhi. I've made that. It was my Nikizumi religion for a while, but I've converted recently. I'm now a devout Mokina-ist. And I can explain that in more detail in the months to come.
I will say, like, the animation is definitely something to point out. Like, Kyoto Animation did phenomenal. They were even able to make, like, even the mundane things not
seem as mundane as they actually are.
Yeah, like, they're constantly adjusting the camera and the cartoon camera. They're always showing something, and that's again kind of where the show really gets its subtlety, is when it's showing you something without telling you what it is.
Art house film camera angles, that's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah, the cinematography in general for this series is amazing. You don't see this in just television series. Like the angles they pick, what they decide to kind of cut out of and frame, is always really, it's just fun to watch. The characters themselves are all really dynamic, and with most of them still maintaining a strong sense of mystery. Like, we learn a lot about a lot of these characters, but there's still plenty that we don't know, and a lot of it is actually kind of scary to think about. Like, Koizumi's organization is like the Illuminati. They're like pulling strings behind the scenes, and there's always this kind of moment. It's like, can you really trust Koizumi?
I think the other thing that stuck out to Haruhi to me at the time, and still sticks out, at least when I rewatched the first season, is just the doldrums that anime was in at the time. And I'm not going to say that this show pulled it out of those doldrums, but there was this just burst of the Moe Focus series, and these school time adventure shows, and
really became big.
School dramas became big. Cutesy Moe, what I refer to as cutesy Moe garbage, became really big. Shows that were all about being as saccharine sweet and bright and with very little substance to them. The influx of early digital animation, and just how awful that looked. And if you want an example of that, go back to any early 2000s show, and you will see just even good shows. Like, I mean, I'm not even just, like, limiting this to crappy shows. I'm saying even, like, good shows, like Get Backers or Gundam Seed. The animation still looks awful. And, like, anime just wasn't interesting looking. It was bright. There was no substance to it, if you asked me. There was very little for me, and I think a lot of other fans, to bite onto. And when this show came out, I picked it up on an impulse buy, personally. But I liked that it seemed to be making fun of the stereotypes.
Yeah.
I liked that the characters were winking at the camera and saying, well, we've got to have a Bishonen character, because we got to have a Bishonen character. Why wouldn't we? We gotta have a Rei Ayanami character. We gotta have a Moe character. Why wouldn't we have that? It was like Haruhi herself was explaining how screwed up the mindset of anime fans are. And I loved that. The weirder part was that the fans who weren't feeling like this was the doldrums were also eating this show up.
I was definitely drawn to the novelty of, God being the high school girl. And you can't tell her that she's God. You have to keep her in the dark. And just, there's so much potential in that premise alone. Especially when the person that you can't let know is Haruhi. Because she's crazy. And I think, like, you can really relate to Kyon, or at least I've always found it fun to relate to Kyon, on how things just kind of happen around him, and he's constantly reacting to them, and he doesn't want them to happen, but at the same time, he's always happy when they are. Or in his deepest, darkest parts, he's happy that they are. We find out a little bit more about that in the later series to come. But
for better or for worse.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Kyon is one of the first cosplays I did. Actually, it's the third one I did, but that's beside the point. The relationship between Haruhi and Kyon I've always admired and really enjoyed. Like, we don't see a lot of female characters in anime that are like Haruhi, or really proactive and confident in what they want, and boisterous like that. We get so many kind of Mikurus, which, you know, there's a lot of tropes at play with the series. And I really like how they work with them and explore them.
It was a lot of fun. It was a deconstruction of a lot of anime. And but at the same time, it was still having fun with it. And I really enjoyed that first season. But, like we were saying before, geez, Haruhiism got big. Like, huge big. Like, ridiculous big. I do not think it's exactly a secret now. You were part of it. I was definitely part of it. This was huge. But, like I also mentioned, I was noticing that there were people who I didn't feel like were quite getting the joke. I feel like they overtook the fan base more than anything. And, but there were more things wrong with this series than just the fan base. Because there was...
I think it's a good point part to start going into, like, what was wrong with Season 1? In retrospect. We were discussing this a little bit earlier between ourselves, and how, at some moments, the first time we saw them, we were kind of caught up in the moment, and a lot of things are played for laughs, and we laughed along with them. And then after watching the other seasons, kind of coming back and looking at them, it's a lot more darker than I think we remember, and there's a lot more wrong with it.
Haruhi's obsession with Mikuru is very uncomfortable. Like, the first time you watch, I don't know why it didn't click with me the first time I watched it. Like, it might be just the manic energy and the show kind of trying to make it fun, but the way that Haruhi treats Mikuru is borderline sexual abuse. We didn't go into detail in it in the video because there's really no way of... But I think you were right the first time, Arcemise. We need to mention, we actually tried recording this once already, and we went into more detail, and we just got uncomfortable. Really uncomfortable talking about how Haruhi treats Mikuru, which is fracked up, to say the least.
Like, for instance, for those that haven't seen the series, you know, we're introduced to Mikuru, who is dragged into this room, and then looking like terrified, and like Haruhi locks the door and tells her to be quiet.
Then
and
proceeds to fondle her.
And fondles her breasts. Well, she's, like, sitting there, like, wailing, screaming, and Kyon, throughout the series, especially at the beginning, he really tries to promote himself as being this kind of white knight, like, I'll stand up for your virtue and protect you from Haruhi and everything. Like, again, he's the narrator, he's telling us this, and look how reliable he is. But, like, when push comes to shove, man, he buckles. How did you describe it, Nick?
Buckles like a brand new belt. I mean, he is Shinji Ikari in End of Evangelion pathetic. From
one perspective, I can kind of understand that, and maybe this is kind of why it just kind of works with Kyon's character, is that he's also a high school guy, and that's what high school guys think about all the time. Very stereotyped, of course. You know, not everybody is like this. But he says, you know, I'll stand up for you. And then when, like, Haruhi starts, like, stripping Mikuru to get her into a maid outfit or something, he's just kind of standing there shocked and just can't stop staring. at her bra.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got so many, like, pervy comments in his head that he shares with us.
And it gets a little uncomfortable. Like, on one end, you have our female lead, or title character, I guess we could say, who's just straight up abusing this girl, and we have another lead who is being a real scuzzbucket about it.
And like, we're constantly told by Kyon that he doesn't approve, but at the same time, he takes no action to prevent it. And it becomes frustrating, but even more frustrating, as we'll see, is I really don't like Koizumi because he's a yes man. Haruhi says something, Haruhi says jump, he says how high. And he never questions her, so if she wants to do something mean to Mikuru, he's totally okay with it. Like, he even walks in to the room at one point when Kyon is actually struggling to separate Mikuru and Haruhi to keep her from, like, groping her and whatnot. And you know, Kyon's struggling to keep them separate. Koizumi just, like, walks in and is like, oh, hey, how's it going? He goes and sits down and watches.
Yeah, when Kyon finally does step up, there's something odd. Koizumi is this character who I feel like they're trying to set up as something negative. Like, I think so. Very subtly.
Yeah. And the show, I will comment on a positive note, like, the show handles subtlety really well.
Mm.
Almost too well, as you pointed out, like, people are just not getting it. But it handles visual cues expertly. Like, facial expressions are just perfect in this series to really communicate what people are feeling, and all sorts of other, like, really subtle things. Like I mentioned earlier, to figure out where we are chronologically, you can look at the items in the room.
Mm.
And at this point, they only had the one season to go on, but they placed all sorts of stuff in the room so you know where in the timeline it is. But yeah.
You talk about how you can read characters by people's faces, and Koizumi, he always has this smile going on, so you can't even read him that easily. He's just
He's got that smile that is like, he's smiling, but he's never actually smiling. That fake one.
Anime fox face going on.
Yes. He is wearing a mask. And man, he only lets it down a handful of times throughout season 1. And it's mostly when he's, like, shocked or astonished. He's like, what? Oh yeah. And then it's back on. Yuki is interesting. They explore her a little bit. And but she becomes a very popular character, both in the fandom and in the series itself. To both positive and negative results, I think.
In future installments, she's one of the only characters who they really took the time to develop. And I guess we're going to focus right now on this series. Even here, I welcomed the fact that they do take little chances to develop her as a character, and that she's not just stuck being a Rei Ayanami clone, even though that's really what the joke kind of is in her existence, is that she is kind of a Rei Ayanami clone.
So yeah, I think that's a lot of Haruhi Season 1.
I wanted to clarify when I say people didn't get it. I'm not trying, I know that sounds incredibly pretentious of me. I do want to say that. Hipster at heart, but in all seriousness, when I say people didn't get it, what I'm referring to is that I would run into people who, they would talk to me about the characters, and they would really be about, yeah, Mikuru is so great because she is so moe stereotype, or I love this stereotype, thus I like Yuki, you know, that kind of thing. And for me it was like, you know, they're there to make fun of that stereotype, right? That they're pointing out that archetype and saying that there's a problem here. But but it was like people weren't grasping that. It became even more apparent, and I think where I finally divorced myself from Haruhi fandoms was when I met other Haruhi fans. I went to a convention a couple of years back that both Crispin Freeman and Johnny Young Bosch were at, who were in the Haruhi Suzumiya dub. Wendy Lee was also supposed to be there, but she canceled her appearance. And Freeman you could see that there was some annoyance when I showed up to a panel that he and Bosch were doing on Haruhi. It was like he didn't quite understand what the appeal of the show was. And as far as he was concerned, he was just playing another grumpy character. You know, Crispin Freeman plays someone grumpy. What a shock.
Just that, is always complaining about everything.
Mm-hmm. And I guess he fit that bill, because he did complain about a lot, but some of the stuff sounded kind of valid. Like, there were these extras that Bandai did to promote the series called the ASOS Brigade. And he was complaining about them and how they basically came into the studio to ask him stupid questions. And if you look at the extras on the American DVD releases, they are pretty embarrassing. Like, not as in that they were asking Crispin Freeman embarrassing questions, but they were embarrassing themselves putting this whole sequence together. It's bad. It's really stupid. You have Johnny Young Bosch, who didn't have a whole lot of positive things to say about the fan base either, in that he was at a convention and went on to talk about how there's the dance. Everyone knows the Haruhi dance that was the closing credits on the show. And they asked him to do the dance. They didn't tell him he was doing the whole 5-minute song, and he didn't know it. Mm-hmm. And so he was asked to be a guest and basically was forced to embarrass himself for 5 whole minutes. He was really sore about that. It was interesting, it sounded like the voice actors on this series were not enjoying the fandom.
Yeah.
And the fans who were at the panel didn't help me with that either, because there were people who would actually ask, top 5 Haruhi episodes, go! Now, I don't care what you think of Crispin Freeman or Johnny Young Bosch, because I certainly have my opinions of them, but whatever you do think of them, you have to admit that when someone shows up to a convention, when they have taken the time to talk to you as a guest, that you treat them with more respect than, dance monkey because I say so.
The fandom, like most fandom that just kind of explodes, it had its bad sides. And I think we got to see a lot of that. Though I would mention, I do want to say, the dub was excellent. They might not have gotten why people really like the show, but they put their A game together.
Oh yeah, it's a fantastic dub.
Make that dub. It's very impressive. I like that version more.
The Haruhi phenomenon was fascinating at this point, and I guess that's something that I do want to leave with people as we do this Haruhi retrospective thing. That it felt like it was this huge juggernaut for only a 12-episode show. It was huge. And with this oversaturation of moe stuff and crappy shonen shows, sorry, I'm not a big Bleacher Naruto person, people. But with all of this, oversaturation, it felt like it was this big monster that just couldn't be sunk. And we went out, when there was rumor that a second season might be coming, we started getting excited. And I want you guys to try to remember that energy and how high energy was when this series came out as we close out this review. That said, as Arcemise has already pointed out, there were things that were problems that we probably should have picked up on. So, it's been a long time since we got to do this, but are you ready for Signs of the Apocalypse, Arcemise?
I totally am.
Oh, that feels so good. By the way, Destiny fans, Signs of the Apocalypse are back. How about that?
The end is nigh.
The 7 angels and the 7 seals are moving.
Indeed. So, what would be, first sign of the apocalypse? Probably the harassment of Mikuru. She is so abused throughout this first season. And it's not even as bad as it gets, as we see later on. But, definitely didn't pick up on how wrong it was or that, like, how much we let it slide. That's definitely a big one.
Yeah, there was just, that whole bit is just really uncomfortable. Talking about it was even more uncomfortable.
It's fun showing it in Anime Club, which, back in Kento, I think at the time we had a pretty 50-50 split for, men and women.
The university anime club that we were with back in our college days. God, we have back in our college days now. We're old.
We're old as dirt.
But
other things, definitely the fandom itself. Like, the energy that kind of fandom often generates, and the expectations that many people then have. And from a business standpoint, like, you have to then appeal to so many people who have no idea what they want, like what they truly want.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Fans are the worst people to put in charge of anything. If you are a fan of something, then you should never be creatively in charge of it. Mm-hmm. And I don't know how much of that was under, like, how much of Kyoto was under fan control for future stuff, but I mean, but they were at the mercy of their fan base at this point. In many ways. But I think there's another way of looking at this, like going at it from another perspective, is not only are they at the mercy of the fans, but at the same time, this also can invigorate a creator and might start making them think that they can really just get away with anything, because now the fans loved it. They loved the first one, now they can really pull whatever they want.
They're totally gonna buy it, no matter what, if it's complete crap.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I'd probably bring up is, like, just how much merchandise there actually was for Haruhi. Because you had music CDs, there's radio shows, there's all sorts of stuff, and
Ray and Asuka were challenged for the first time as PVC figure queens.
Exactly. Like, from one perspective, it was really neat. One thing I forgot to mention that I loved in the show is, like, all the little things that are kind of happening. You could go and find out what those little things were, like by reading online, because they're often mentioned in the books or something like that. It made it a really fun experience to kind of go explore the world of Haruhi. But at the same time, there's so much content then that was really saturated, and, like, you can really get lost in all of it. And so, you know, what they decided to show for the next season and whatnot was, you know, they had to pick from a lot of stuff, but at the same time, not a lot, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. There's this huge, enormous world, but then again, that also goes back to your earlier point, was that with all of that source material to draw from, and all of these fans eating it up, there is no way to make everyone happy there.
Yeah.
Like, on another example of adapting things and making everyone happy, I'm still profoundly shocked by how well Marvel's superhero adaptations of the big screen are going. Because, I mean, I'm a big Captain America reader, and that movie didn't let me down at all. And I'm trying to imagine, like, being in a position with, like, I guess the Haruhi people were kind of lucky where they only had, you know, like 6 or 7 light novels to draw from rather than 70 years of one comic book character. But there's still all of that source material to draw from. How do you make people happy?
Yeah. And I noticed this later, but, like, where they were pulling the episodes from season 1 from the source material, like, I think I just got the light novel that has Live Alive in it. Mm-hmm. And it's after, like, book 6. So, like, the first season, like, I don't know if I can't remember if that book was actually written by them or if it was just something that they kind of communicated between the writer and the TV show people, but like,
I'm only guessing it was in the novel, but I'm guessing that because Gary, everyone remembers Gary from the Evangelion review, didn't make a big deal about the changes from the light novel, and he's usually my go-to guy when it comes to being upset about changes from a light novel.
Yeah, but there's so many different storylines to choose from, and as I'm starting to read pieces that haven't been animated yet, there's fewer of them now, but whether or not the writing itself of the original source material could keep up with the fandom too, not even just the animated series, but could the quality of the writing for the books themselves keep up? And it's kind of shaky, honestly.
Well, whenever something gets a big following, I'm going to sound really hipster when I say this, but whenever, the following of something, increases by a lot, the writing is going to change. Mm-hmm. That's just how it is. I'm not saying that it inevitably gets better or it inevitably gets worse, but it is going to change to try to appeal to that broader base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Otherwise, I don't know. I was very optimistic. I don't know if that can be used as a sign of the apocalypse. I was really excited for the next season of this show. As soon as it was announced, I had pre-ordered that DVD set. Of course, it took it 2 years to come out.
Yeah, Bandai announced that that the second season was going to get a U.S. release, and nothing happened.
I want to say it was a year from when they announced that they got it to when we got it.
Mm-hmm.
I know it had been out in Japan for at least a year. We can talk about how that affected season 2 next time.
But for right now, Haruhi was definitely a cultural phenomenon, and I still enjoy it. I think it holds up pretty well.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see how it holds up as time continues to go by, because it's still relatively new in my mind. And
yeah, it's 6 years old.
Oh,
the recording of this video.
Oh, by Full Metal Alchemist logic, that means it's time to do a remake.
Oh God.
I'm sorry, I'm a jerk.
But yeah, I'm still a really big fan of the Haruhi series. Again, I think it has so much potential as a story and characters that can develop, and maybe the light novels will get them out of high school. I don't know. That hardly ever happens. And you're caught perpetually repeating the same thing over and over again. Anyway, Haruhi was if you look back at my channel, maybe we can plug a link in the description section.
Darn right I will.
Haruhi and Kyon was the first AMV that I made. Set to Don't Stop Believing. And I don't think I will stop. I think it's a great series. I think people can still really enjoy it to this day, but we'll see how that goes when we check out the other series.
Because there's still a long way to go. As next up, when we do our Haruhi retrospective, we will be looking at Haruhi Suzumiya Season 2. And I know that there's a certain thing relating to 8 that I know a lot of you are expecting us to be upset about. And you may be surprised by what we have to say about it. Because there's definitely some ill feelings toward this season, but it might not be to what you're expecting them to be towards.
We got a bigger fish to fry.
So does this mean that Izumi and Arcemise are tackling the Endless Eight? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're taking it on.
Bring it.
But the Endless Eight is not what we're saving the nuke for.
No.
Mm-mm. So, we look forward to hearing from you guys again. We hope you enjoy this little podcast. Go check out Arcemise Haruhi AMV. Go check out his other AMVs, because you'll be a better person if you do that.
Yay!
As always, still rocking out from here at the Fifth Avenue studio, I'm Nick Izumi.
And I'm Arcemise, trying to finish up grad school.
Keep on spocking in the free world.
Have a nice night.